Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today is December 11th, 2024, and well, it's basically 3 days after my marathon event. And for people who don't know, that's 26.2 miles. The official course seemed to be just a little bit longer than that, but only based on the information that my smart device registered. So what did I enjoy about the experience? The experience was great. I got to see San Antonio on foot. Got to see parts of San Antonio that I'd never been to, that I'd never explored for very long. I got to see a lot of different restaurants, businesses, and neighborhoods, and that was probably the most amazing part, was seeing the neighborhoods and experiencing the camaraderie that brought together the unique people who were helping us along our journey. So that was a lot of fun. There were a lot of people that, I didn't know would have cared, but a lot of people actually did seem to care and went out of their way to provide out of their own pockets refreshments for people who were going through this experience. That was great. And the weather was nice. The temperatures, I believe, were in the 60s. It was overcast the whole day. I got to run on base on Fort Sam Houston and see a lot of inspiring people cheering us on along the way. So overall, my experience was great. I mentioned in one of my other videos that people were trying to dissuade some people like myself from participating because apparently if you don't run the whole thing, then you basically, you're not a marathoner according to them. And for me, all I've got to say is that, well, I completed the distance in the amount of time that was given to me, and I did it using appropriate footwear, and I didn't use a skateboard or rollerblades or anything like that. Although it seems like it would be just as daunting to cover that kind of terrain and distance with anything, whether it was a bicycle or a skateboard or what have you. And none of that really matters. What does matter is that I wanted to clarify that I had a pretty good experience, and I want to make it clear that I wasn't, sad about the overall experience. I did see a lot of rubbish in the waterways, in the spillways. I did see a lot of old one-time use plastic and all kinds of other things in our green belts. But that's something that I've been showcasing all along. And that's been happening everywhere, not just our regular cities. You can go to our national parks, our state parks. You can go to some of the most remote areas known and find rubbish from this year, last year, the year before, strewn about, blowing about in the areas that I've traveled to. As far as the marathon experience itself and what I didn't like, the marathon took me just under 6.5 hours to complete. I think it was like 6 hours and 22 minutes or 6 hours and 24 minutes, something like that. Whatever the case, it was under my anticipated time frame that I had forecast, which was about 6 hours and 30 minutes. So I beat my projected time, and I came in at about 20 whatever minutes longer than my watch predicted. My watch predicted that I would complete the race in about 5 hours and 56 minutes. And in all cases, I think that the terrain and the overall preparation were contributors to what I was and was not able to do. So I was mostly prepared, but the terrain was, of course, vastly different in terms of scale than some of the terrain that I had been running on. Like running uphill for my hills that are around here, the hills were constant and gradual, but they weren't like for the miles or whatever the distance was for some of the hills that I got to run on in San Antonio. It's like once you started going uphill, you couldn't see the crest of the hill in some places. That's how it felt, and you just kept going uphill and uphill, and then eventually you got to where you were going level or downhill. And I think that more or less I was prepared for those things, but on the scale, I did end up slowing down here and there a little bit more than I had expected. It wasn't due to any of the pain that I was experiencing before. All of that seemed to pretty much disappear en route. So I had this pain in my toe that the week before the marathon, I'd gone to Big Bend to soak in the healing hot springs in order to restore that circumstance back to normal. And it seemed to work. I mean, you don't have to trust me or take my word for it. The point is, you can watch these videos and see that I was having some difficulty where every other step was hurting because my right foot had a toe that was just jacked up. And after going to the hot springs, continuing with my training and soaking a few times, it felt like my toe was restored and parts of me felt rejuvenated, and I was able to complete the run, complete the distance anyway. But as I mentioned, it was at a slow speed, so that brings me to the part about the experience that I did not like. There were at least 4 areas I passed through where there were orange rinds all over the ground, and I've mentioned this before, but the orange rinds were evidence of something that someone at Fleet Feet had told me about. They told me, oh yeah, when you're running, there's going to be people giving out pickle shots and energy gels and this, that, and the other. But one of the things he mentioned that really caught my interest was the orange slices. I thought, yeah, man, that's the kind of stuff that I like to have, fruits, vegetables, things like that. And the oranges sounded like such a bonus. And when I ran past the first set of or distance of ground that was covered with orange rinds, I recognized, there was no one giving out any oranges there. So they had pretty much finished giving out those items and they were gone. So the first area, that was a disappointment. By the time I got to the second, third, and fourth areas where there were formerly oranges, but there were none anymore, I was a little bit disappointed because, slow runners, especially slow runners, could probably have benefited from those treats. So overall, the San Antonio Rock and Roll Marathon was pretty great because they took care of everyone as best they could, and they looked out for you, in terms of satisfying what your purchase agreement was. It wasn't like you were guaranteed to get orange slices, but one of the other things I did not like about the experience was that you could prepay for photos and videos from the event. And I think that all the photographers were there probably for the fast runners. And then later on in the day, they probably had left because they probably got paid for just a certain number of hours. And so I did see that I got some pictures taken by this entity for both the 5K and the marathon experience. And also I apparently appeared in one video that has yet to be uploaded or processed. But the photo experience was unusual in that in both cases for the 5K and the marathon, I got pictures of some other person with a whole different bib number on the front of their shirt and a different gender. Not that that matters, but to me it would be easily identifiable if I was sorting through the pictures to get the correct pictures to the correct person. But for whatever reason, these pictures that I got weren't entirely accurate, and I was charged a significant amount for them, whereas on the prior runs that I've gone on with organized events, they didn't charge for that. That was just part of the experience. You might not have gotten a medal, you might not have gotten some other gear that they said you were going to get and charged you for, but you for sure would get at least a picture or two to share, So anyway, overall, my experience was pretty great, and I want to reiterate that. I don't want it to seem like I was just kind of droning on and on about how disappointing it was with this, that, and the other, or how sad I am that some of the commenters in some places or another were not all that supportive or encouraging, and in some cases were downright discouraging and frustrating. And those type of energies take away from our abilities to succeed at certain things. Like if we have something in our mind where someone made us feel a certain way, that energy goes into whatever we're producing. So in some cases, what you've seen here is basically produced based on insight and or contributions from viewers, possibly just like yourself. So whether we know it or not, we're encouraging one another or taking from one another the ability to achieve something. So as I post these things here with my insights, I hope to encourage someone else to succeed at something. And hopefully as we succeed at things, we'll recognize what we're charging for and what we're selling. And hopefully we'll start to acknowledge that nature is providing for us everything, even the ability for you to watch this video on whatever screen you're watching this on, whether it's a big 80-inch type TV or a small folding mobile device. The fact is that all of the things that we're holding in our hands, and even our hands themselves, are natural. They came from nature. And so if we're exploiting a resource and charging for it and not giving credit back to where credit is due, that sometimes leaves us with an oversight, and we might be overlooking the spillways with the water that has all the pollution in it. We might be overlooking how we make one another feel, whether we answer one another's questions. There was this one time, this person, I would answer all their questions, but I asked them like 2 or 3 questions, and they wouldn't answer just those 2 or 3 questions. And so I narrowed it down to one and said, hey, what about this piece of research? Check out this website. It's showing the same thing that I'm talking about. How do you feel about that? They wouldn't respond. So at a certain point, I just stopped looking at anything that they posted. And that's basically how I started dealing with that, and not absorbing any kind of energy that was not reciprocal, not reciprocating growth. And so when I do something like that, I can feel energies. Sometimes the energy will be positive, sometimes it'll be negative, and sometimes it'll be angry. And that's the kind of conversations that I've had in the past with our fathers, with my father in particular, and just telling him about seeing the rubbish on the spillways, might have been something that caused him to get angry at me just for telling him a story about what I experienced. So there are people out there who will ask you, what have you been up to? And then you start telling the story, and it's not really all that important to them. It was just something they asked as a cordial expression, of interacting with one another. So on this channel, I don't like to, keep it just cordial. I like to make sure that it's complete and thorough and honest. And in all honesty, I've had a great time presenting information on this channel. I've had a great time learning, probably a better time learning from this platform than almost anywhere. and it's because I'm able to see people from vast backgrounds who have maybe similar or way different experiences, but who are trying to accomplish similar things. And every person has their own insight that they bring to the table. And I've tried to take the best of what I can to learn from it, and also the worst to avoid those pitfalls. And in so doing, I know that I've made more progress than I would have been able to do alone. So thank you so much, YouTube, and all of the commenters and subscribers who helped us to get to 700 subscribers. We're past that now, and who are moving us on the way to 1,000 subscribers. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll have the option to be monetized on this platform, and I'm sure they'll move the carrot again when that happens. But either way, we're continuing to make that progression, and so now I'm going to focus on some other things while this channel just kind of has some preloaded videos that are going to autopilot us into the next year. Happy New Year and Merry Holidays, wherever you are, whatever that might mean to you. Don't forget about the reason for the season, and don't forget about trying to uplift one another. And if you've had some outstanding questions that you haven't answered, man, how did that sweat drop into my eye right then? There are synchronicities that happen where I know that, people want to communicate, but in a different way, maybe in the way that we used to communicate when we were children. And so laughing at people's adversities and hoping they get sweat in their eye at inopportune times is one of those things that I know I've directly experienced. And as a kid, I know that I wished a whole lot of fates onto a whole lot of people. And I know I could have done better. And so too could my upbringing have been better. But in the meantime, that was then, and now this is up to me, what happens going forward. And so if I have the opportunity to help to coerce people to behave better, to make better choices, and to pay attention to the slow runners even, not just the fast runners, then hopefully we'll get around to where the only thing that gets dropped all over the road, possibly in our greenways, is something that can help spread seeds of growth. And that would be something, I think, to change the scene to where instead of dropping a bunch of cups, maybe we're dropping a bunch of, strawberry tops, where, those pieces are dropped into nature, and eventually we have wild strawberries growing, or raspberries, or what have you. And I have a lot of ideas, sure, so does everyone else. The only thing is most of us have been coerced into not sharing those great ideas, and not being inspired, and not being joyful. But this is a new time frame. This is a new thing that we're moving into together. So I can learn a lot more, just like you can. Once we stop learning, that's basically the point where we start aging in an accelerated manner. If you pay attention to these videos, I might even link to this from this one to the one last year, but I was sharing a video where I learned to complete the Rubik's Cube, which that's something I had never solved before. And that's a skill. To be able to do that, to be able to learn to, run X amount of distance, to be able to learn to hula hoop, jump rope, play a sport, to learn is basically the thing that keeps us young. So a lot of us think we're learning when we're switching on the TV, as we continue to take the same prescriptions and follow the same regimen of barely contacting the people that we should be learning with. And a lot of us forget that we're not really learning when we continue to just watch television and advertised sponsored shows. But anyway, all of those personal insights aside, the fact is that I tremendously enjoyed the San Antonio Rock and Roll Marathon experience. I was pleasantly surprised with the swag that was provided, and I was a little bit not as overwhelmingly satisfied with the fact that some of the things that were given out to the runners were only given out to the people who were going really fast. And some of the slow runners got forgotten about. That was kind of a bummer. And also it was really weird that despite how automated a lot of these things are, I still got pictures of people that aren't me in my pictures catalog, which that's fine because those individuals were smiling and having fun. So it was good to see them. Maybe I'll look them up by bib number and contact them to see if they got that picture or if I'm the only one that got that errant picture of theirs. I really don't know. What I do know is that that was my first marathon experience. And after having done that, I now have the knowledge required to successfully complete my next marathon with a much improved set of variables. You know, whether it be the time, the conditions, even whatever it is, I know that I'm going to be able to persevere in ways that far exceed the success that I accomplished this past weekend. So thanks so much for listening and for subscribing and sharing insights. Until next time, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.